All right, so there's been some significant news buzzing in the evangelical world, and it revolves around two really prominent organizations, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association and Samaritan's Purse. Now, if you've been following Christian ministries, these names are practically household staples, especially given their historical ties and the incredible work they've done over decades. What's caught a lot of attention recently is their decision to part ways with the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability, or ECFA. For those unfamiliar, the ECFA is a big deal in the nonprofit and religious sectors. It's an organization that provides accreditation and financial accountability for thousands of ministries, essentially acting as a watchdog to ensure transparency and ethical financial practices. It was actually co-founded by Billy Graham himself back in 1979, with his BGEA being one of its very first members. Samaritan's Purse, led by his son Franklin Graham, joined a couple of years later, solidifying a long-standing relationship between these ministries and the Accountability Council. So why the split? It boils down to a new policy introduced by the ECFA called the Excellence in Supporting Leadership Integrity. This new standard, announced in March 2024, aims to address leader care and integrity within member organizations, and it seems this is where the paths diverged. According to ECFA's Vice President of Member Accountability, Jake Lapp, the reason for the departure of BGEA and Samaritan's Purse was a lack of agreement with this new policy. The ministries themselves, through their media relations director, Mark Barber, clarified that they did not resign. Instead, they did not renew their membership, which happened on October 1st. It's a subtle distinction, but perhaps an important one for them. Franklin Graham, who leads both organizations, laid out his objections in a letter to the ECFA back in July. He and the boards of his ministries expressed strong concerns, both in principle and practice, regarding this new leader care standard. Graham's core argument is that this policy pushes the ECFA beyond its original mission of financial accountability and into a role he described as trying to be the moral police of the evangelical world. He feels that the ECFA is venturing into areas where it lacks expertise, such as dictating how much time a leader should spend reading the Bible or whether they should abstain from alcohol. He even suggested it could lead to more invasive practices like monitoring social media. From Graham's perspective, without clear, agreed-upon guidelines, such a standard becomes meaningless window dressing. He sees the leader care standard as a knee-jerk reaction to recent high-profile moral failures within evangelical ranks, but one that ultimately misses the point. He concluded that these failures are fundamentally a sin problem rooted in the human heart, which only God can fix, not the ECFA, regardless of how many standards they implement. However, the ECFA's stance is that a plan for leader care is indeed necessary. They argue that leaders facing immense pressure can become more susceptible to abuse authority, create unreasonable expectations of self or others, sidestep appropriate accountability, or engage in other unbiblical conduct. They emphasize that the standard isn't prescriptive regarding the contents of such a plan, but rather advises on elements like dedicated time for prayer, time off, work-family balance, annual medical checkups, and even sabbaticals. Essentially, it's about creating a supportive structure for leaders to maintain their well-being and integrity. Other prominent Christian leaders like Kenneth Hodder, the former national commander of the Salvation Army, have publicly supported the ECFA's new standard, stating that organizations need to ensure their leaders personally hold to the highest standards of integrity and competence to maintain public trust. This entire situation really highlights a fascinating tension within large religious organizations, the balance between external accountability and internal autonomy. On one hand, you have the ECFA, which was born out of a desire for transparency and trust after various financial scandals in the past. Their mission is to provide a framework for ethical operation, and they're evolving their standards to address what they perceive as broader integrity issues impacting the ministries they accredit. The idea is that sound financial health and ethical leadership are intrinsically linked. If a leader faces burnout or spiritual decline, it can absolutely impact the financial stewardship and overall mission of an organization. On the other hand, you have ministries like BGEA and Samaritan's Purse, which are massive in scale and reach. They have their own internal governance and strong leadership, and they seem to view this particular ECFA standard as an overreach, an attempt to legislate spiritual or personal integrity, which they believe falls outside the purview of a financial accountability body. Franklin Graham's point about moral failures being a sin problem that only God can fix is a theological one, suggesting that external standards, no matter how well-intentioned, cannot truly prevent internal moral failings. He implies that such matters are best addressed through spiritual discipline and personal conviction within the leader's own faith journey and the internal oversight of their respective boards, rather than by an external accreditation body. It's also worth noting that BGEA's financials have drawn some scrutiny in recent years. Back in 2014, the organization reclassified itself as a church or an association of churches. This change means it no longer has to file a Form 990 with the IRS, which is the public document that details financial information for most nonprofits. This reclassification makes Graham's current salary at BGEA non-public. His last reported salary from BGEA 11 years ago was just under $260,000, and combined with his Samaritan's Purse salary at the time, his total income was around $880,000. In 2023, his salary from Samaritan's Purse alone was reported as over $882,000. While the ECFA's new standard isn't directly about salary transparency, the broader conversation about financial accountability and leadership integrity often intertwines with how leaders are compensated and how transparent those figures are to the public and donors. This departure of two such prominent organizations is definitely a significant moment for the ECFA. They've already seen 90 members decline to renew since the new policy was announced, though not all for the same stated reasons as BGEA and Samaritan's Purse. It signals a shifting landscape in how evangelical ministries are being evaluated and held accountable, and it raises important questions about the scope of such oversight bodies. For many viewers, this situation might prompt reflection on what they value most in a ministry: stringent external accountability across all aspects of leadership, or a more focused approach primarily on financial transparency, leaving personal integrity to internal spiritual and governance structures. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, and one that will likely continue to spark conversation and debate within the wider Christian community. If you found this video insightful, please consider giving this video a like, sharing it with others who might be interested, and subscribing to the channel for more discussions on faith, current events, and ministry. We'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the ECFA's new standard? Do you believe it oversteps its boundaries, or is it a necessary step for accountability? Let's keep the conversation going.